Hi, I'm Bernard with She Hair USA, and it all starts here for me. We're going to go back to the 4 basic placement patterns. In other videos, I show how I use these on full heads, but for now, I just want to show you kind of why I use these 4 patterns in different areas and kind of explain each one as it starts. Right off the bat, this placement pattern number 1 is where I would put a bond right next to another bond, right next to another bond, and some people think just that is crazy to put bonds right next to each other. They think they might tangle or be too close together or stick. They don't. If they're put in correctly, which is in a technique video I've done in the past, you can see that these bonds will not stick together if done correctly. I've done thousands of heads and this works really well. And then in some places on the head where there's a really tight area that you're trying to build some thickness or fullness or color blocking technique, putting another row right underneath it really tight works out really well. So not that I would use any one of these patterns on a full head, but I'll use different patterns in different places, and we'll go over that in a minute also. So moving to technique number 2, similar to technique number 1 as far as the bonds are right next to each other, but a little space between them. You know, we have a little space between row 1 and row 2, no matter where they are on the head. Little space to a lot of space. And then technique number 3 kind of looks like a checkerboard pattern. We put a bond in and leave just enough space to not have a bond, and then put another one and another one, and then really tight. And of course, you kind of see where this is going because you can see technique number 4, as much space in between them as you want. Some people use this for highlights, lowlights, and things like that. So let me show you an example of this first pattern right here. I'm going to pull this head on set right here for just a minute. That first row I put in all the way around the top, follows a hairline curve, and the bonds are right next to each other. And then you see later, I decided to use a technique called the checkerboard pattern, which I would say would be technique number 3. Or let's say your hair is fine and thin and you didn't need this much hair in here. You could go with technique number 4 and spread it out a little bit. In other videos you've seen where I would use this technique in the back and just do a couple of rows, and that would be technique number 2. So feel free to use different techniques, different patterns on different parts of the head, but let me just kind of go into what some of these patterns do. In the full head, when I'm starting with the top row up high like this and following that hairline like you've seen on the mannequin, what that does is that hairline kind of travels back. So by starting high, I'm able to, let's just do this for a second and draw some hair on the client. Let's say she's got some layers in there like that. Well, putting a row really low here and following the hairline only gives me extensions in this area and doesn't blend these bangs. Whereas up high allows me to put some hair in this front area and blend those bangs to whatever length I want and cut them later. And then by following the pattern of the head here gives me this length differentiation from here to here, so it gives a more rounded, natural pattern. And it shows a little bit better on the back here, where you're putting extensions in, following that hairline along here. As you can imagine, this ends up being right here, and this ends up being up here. So everything that connects the dots here ends up connecting the dots here. So you start with a really natural looking head of hair that's starting to really start to layer itself up the sides, and then when you're putting the hairs over here on this side, that kind of goes around there, also layers it just a little bit more, and you get a more natural look all the way around. And so if you've done that on your top row and your bottom row with the hair close together, kind of like this, put the hairs close together, it doesn't matter if it pops out underneath the extension hair, it's all together and looks more natural. Whereas if you did it like this with the bonds apart from each other, you start to create some holes and some space in between the hair because you did it up here. So those holes continue on to the end, which doesn't look very natural when it pops out past the length of the client's hair. So that is fine to do in this interior layer or area here and this interior area here. So when you're doing that full head, jumping off a second like this, if you'll do that top row solid, bottom row solid, you're going to get a real nice, neat looking hair line at the bottom, completely full, natural looking. And then you can fill in here with any other patterns you feel comfortable with, depending on how thick or thin the client's head is, or how small or large the head is. Hope that helps you do a full head. Thank you so much for watching.